demo. My name is Mike Morrison with Morrison's Outdoor Adventures. I've been doing four-wheel drive training, recovery training for about 11 years now, certified through the International Four-Wheel Drive Trainers Association. So with trailers getting very, very popular, right? I mean, how many trailer manufacturers are at this show? Trailers are getting very popular on the trail, but we have to drive them differently. And when we make mistakes and don't drive them differently, we end up in bad situations. And most of the time when we are towing a trailer off-road, we are by ourselves, right? So we don't have access to a buddy with a winch or anchor points and everything galore. So we kind of set up this particular recovery with that in mind, keeping it as simple as possible. Now really the only things in this scenario that we could do away with would be the anchor points like the pole pal if we had access to trees and stuff. But you can, with the winch on your vehicle, leaving your trailer connected right to your trailer, okay? But a couple of key points when we do that, number one, we have to route the winch line appropriately using pulley blocks. But the last thing we want to do, our trailer's already suffered one injury of laying on its side, right? The last thing we want to do is let that trailer come down as hard as we can. We don't want to break our wine glasses and our cappuccino makers and stuff we have in there, right? And we don't want to shake up the beer in the fridge. That's all I'm worried about. So, but we also want to make sure that there's a couple of things we inspect before we even start riding the trailer. Number one, as we approach it, we want to make sure that that trailer is secure. So if you've got things like fuel on your trailer or combustible fluids, batteries, electrical systems, things like that, as you approach the trailer, use your first sense, your smell, right? Then you can listen as well. Listen for liquids pouring out, smell for gas, smell for any type of smoke. We want to be concerned about that type of stuff as we approach. If we are clear as we keep getting closer, it's a good idea maybe carry a fire extinguisher as you're coming up. But as we're getting closer, just put a hand on the trailer, right? Give it a little shake, make sure that it's going to stay. If you have any concerns that while you're rigging around this trailer or anything like that, that it could shift, tie it, right? We've got recovery gear, let's use it. We can even use our winch to hold it in place as we're doing our rigging, but we want to get that secured as soon as possible, okay? The next thing we're going to inspect is the hitch, okay? We want to make sure that no damage came to the hitch on the trailer when it was flopping over. Even if you have some of the recirculating hitches or articulating hitches, we still need to give it an inspection. The welds and things around there, if we see paint flaking off the welds, then those welds are probably pretty close to failing, so we need to keep a good inspection on that to make sure it's going to be okay. Because we're going to use the hitch and the connection to the truck to keep this trailer secure as we ride it. If not, the second that it gets on its tires, that trailer's gone, right? It could go anywhere it wants to go. So we're going to use that hitch as a point of contact to hold it in place. Once we feel good about the hitch and that it's going to hold, then we can start looking at getting into rigging, okay? Now, good chance if you're by yourself that you may not be able to slow this trailer down 100% as it comes down. So as we're doing the rigging and this trailer secured, think about getting things out of there that are breakable or that you might want to protect, okay? Maybe you've got a nice expensive battery in there or a fridge in there. Those are good things to get out of that trailer if you can access it. This is also why I don't necessarily advocate keeping your recovery gear in your trailer, because now you got to get your recovery gear out and secure the trailer, okay? So take just a minute, we're going to walk through the rigging, because now we're ready to start rigging, but we're going to walk through the rigging and talk about some of the pieces and parts that we're working with. So on the vehicle here, off the front, we've got the Warn VR Series 12S winch. It's not going to take a lot of weight to roll this trailer over because this is not a heavy trailer, right? Got some of the other ones, it may take a little bit more to get it over, but this winch is more than enough to handle that. So we've run from the winch to a portable anchor point, okay? Because we're in the field here, we don't have anchor points, but if you're out west, the same thing can come up. So that anchor point here, let's make our way over here and take a look at it. This particular one is rated to 14,000 pounds, okay? So we're rated to more than our winch is. So we know that it's gonna hold the load. With pull pals, you have to set them. This is where a shovel comes into play if you're by yourself. You can cut a notch out of the ground to rest the pull pal in and then put tension on it so it digs. What this does is as the winch pulls, it forces this front end down and causes this plow right here to cut and dig. If it's very soft soil, these things will go subterranean. Have you ever watched the movie Tremors where the little monsters cut the furrows in the ground? That's what this will look like on the beach, right? So if you're in really soft terrain, put a strap around the back of it so that you can recover this, because you don't want to have to dig it out, right? So you can do that. You have a good shovel like this one here with some aggressive teeth, you can cut that notch out even in hard ground very easily. Now, as far as lining it up, what we're trying to do is we want to limit any bind on the winch rope. Whenever I watch people setting up complex recoveries, I always chuckle because they'll be in the woods like lining it up, looking for the angles and stuff. It's all in angles and straight lines. So we have to come a straight line out of the winch where the line's not going to connect anything. And from this pulley block, it needs to have a straight shot or a straight line to the trailer, as perpendicular to it as we can, right? May not be able to get it 100%, but as much as we can. So we can easily avoid obstacles like other trailers and awnings and stuff like that. Now, using the pulley block in this situation, this is what we call a redirect. There is no mechanical advantage in this scenario. But when we make our connection to the pull pallet, it has to be with a bow shackle because it has a sharp edge here. So we want something nice and strong when we put it on. So we use a bow shackle for that. We tighten it down, and then we back off that quarter to half turn to make sure it can articulate through there. Now that that's connected, this is considered a live recovery, right? This line now could go tight because the hook will not pass through my pulley. So we consider this a live line. All live lines, when we cross them, we step on them, not over them, because that could be a bad situation, right? My name's not Michael anymore, it's Michelle. So step on them when you cross them. Also, now we're looking at our point there. Where's the most dangerous point to stand? Right? In the triangle of death is what we call it. The Bermuda Triangle, right? So once this has tension on it, the point that's going to have the most pressure is this pulley block. So if something did fail, right, I had bad equipment or whatever, I didn't buy my equipment at Cape Fear Customs, right? Nice plug. Yeah. So if it did fail, it would fail at the pulley block and it's going that way, right? And you can put line dampeners and all the fancy stuff on there, but it's going to go with some force. So we want to protect this area. The only person that should be in this vicinity is the person that's in the vehicle. So I can easily find attachment points, okay? Make sure those attachment points on some trailers is secure. If it's just bolted to the roof and the roof is made out of light tin or aluminum or anything like that, it's probably not a good point to attach to. But what we do want to do is try to wrap around the trailer, across the top and down as low as we can, so that when it pulls, instead of just pulling against the trailer sideways, it's going to pull and twist that trailer. We want that twisting motion. How many people have eaten a Little Debbie Swiss roll and you bite into it, it's got the little swirls in there? That's what we want our straps to look like, right? So that it's pulling it up and over. We also want to limit the chance of our straps sliding side to side, okay? Because we don't want to get it halfway up and then it slips on the rack or something, so we want it someplace secure. Once we are sure about where we're at, and I like to use straps because they're flat. I don't like to take my synthetic winch line over. The straps help the screw. And my straps are a lot cheaper than my synthetic winch line, right? So it's a lot easier to throw one of these away if it gets a nick or something in it, but they're also going to hold up a little bit better than this synthetic winch line. But once I'm ready to make this connection, right, I make the connection. Here I've got a webbing hook on my winch, so I don't need to worry about any type of soft shackle or bow shackle there. If I had maybe one of the cheaper hooks or one of the smaller hooks, I may have to, but in this scenario I don't. Now I'm not coming in 100% perpendicular, right? I just can't get the angle. So there is a chance I could drag this trailer a little bit, okay? If you have the chance that you might drag a trailer, again, your trusty shovel, your recovery shovel, your crazy beaver shovel here, what you can do is you can take a notch out of the ground right where the tires are going to start to grab. So when the tire slips into that notch, it's going to pivot that trailer over, right? Doesn't have to be extreme, but for each tire that's on the ground there, we do need to cut that notch out, and it'll help to get it up and over if we need that twisting motion. As I said earlier, we don't want to just slam this trailer down on the ground. I don't want to shake up my beer, because then I open it at camp and it fizzes all over the place. Mike's not a happy camper. So what I've set up is a belay system, okay, with our recovery gear, so that when this trailer reaches a point, I can let it down easily, hopefully, right? Now, if it starts to slip, the most important thing is me, not the trailer or the equipment. So if it starts to slip, let it go, okay? Let it go. But this particular piece of equipment right here is called an X-Lock from a company called Safe Extract, and it is designed with belaying in mind. It's similar to the rescue industry Rescue 8, but you can also shorten winch line. There is no winch line crossing itself anywhere on here, so there is no problems with rope on rope. And I can control it with the tail here once it reaches the point I need it to reach. If it binds up, then I can give it a little shake and it'll let it go. I can also pull it to the side to get a little more friction, or pull straight on to let that friction off. But notice I've left it a little slack, right? I don't want a whole lot of drag on it until it starts getting close to its point, okay? I don't want to start having to worry about dragging across and creating friction on this, because synthetic winch line does not like heat, and this will heat up very quickly, okay? So we can set that up, but in this scenario we want to make sure that we've got a fairly straight line as the trailer articulates over, okay? Notice I have to offset, and this is just simulating I had different anchor points that weren't perpendicular to the trailer. So I'm offset a little to the side. These over here don't exist, right? There's puppies over here and we don't want to hurt them. So I've offset it to the side. But as this trailer goes up and over, my rope's going to arc up and over. If this is a tree, I'm going to hit it, right? Or if this is something on the trail, I'm going to hit it. So we have to watch out for those type of things, right? So once we start this recovery, we'll slide this out of the way just a little bit. Now, with the way this is set up, I've just run it through a pulley block with a soft shackle on the rack. It does not need to wrap all the way around, right? Because I'm not trying to pick the trailer up, I'm just letting it down. So I'm just taking that load and letting it down. So the main thing is just making sure my rigging here is correct, so that everything is where I want it to be. The good thing is once I pick it up with the winch, I can hold it in place a little bit as I fix my rigging and move around it. This does not have to be a fast operation, right? Sarah, you want to hop into the truck for me? It does not have to be a fast operation, so I don't have to be here trying to rush through this as much as I can. We can lift it a little bit, check it, make sure all our rigging's good, check it again, lift it a little more, do it bit by bit, right? The most important thing is the safety aspect of it. The safe areas for everyone to stand in this realm is from about where the gentleman on the bike is riding up right there through to here, okay? Now ideally we want to get a lot further back, but you're okay, we're not putting a lot of tension on it today. I'm also very sure of my gear. I've picked my gear out. I know that all of my gear, the weakest piece of my gear is that full pal at 14,000 pounds. Weaker than that is the winch at 12,000 pounds. So everything by design is stronger than the winch, so the winch will stall before I brakes up and stuff starts flying apart in a glorious fashion, right? So we keep that kind of thing in mind. Now, I've got to get a little tension on this. I've got my son up there, Steven, with the awesomest mullet ever, just watching the dangerous point. But I can communicate with Sarah here with just hand signals. So I can tell Sarah, say, hey, winch in. Stop. All right. So we can get a little bit of tension on it. Now, Sarah's not going to be able to see me while I'm back here unless she readjusts her side view mirror on the passenger side. Now she can see me, but Maybe she can't. Remember, those little mirrors there, objects are closer than they may appear, so they're kind of distorted. She may not be able to see my hand signals, so I need to make sure they're big hand signals, right? Not little ones, not over here going winch in, winch out, bump it in, bump it out, right? So I want to be sure of that. Now that I feel like the recovery is ready, I want to pick the trailer up a little bit with a little bit of tension on it. So I say, okay, Sarah, winch in, stop. All right, now that the trailer's picked up a little bit, now I want to inspect all that rigging. I want to go through and look to see if the trailer's starting to connect with anything. Make sure that that hitch is still good. Make sure that this isn't going to go anywhere. See, it slips off the fender a little bit right there. So I want to make sure all of that stuff's secure. All these connection points are where I want them to be. This is also my last safety check. Now notice I am lacking one piece of gear. Anybody know what it is? What's that? Rope dampener, right? I don't teach using rope dampeners, not for safety, not in the aspect of knocking the winch line to the ground. Reason being is, if you've ever watched even synthetic winch line or anything else fail, it is a hope and a prayer that it's going to work. If it's steel cable, that's a flag in the air. It's not going to do a thing to it. If it's synthetic winch line, it breaks so fast and in a straight line, a lot of times it will shoot right through it. Also, where's my winch line going to break? I don't know. So where do I put my winch line dampener? I don't know. I'm just like, I hope it breaks right here. Now, in my gear inspection, I noticed damage somewhere, or I have a piece of gear that is questionable. It's got one of those funky ratings like average brake strength or maximum brake strength. Then I may put a piece of dampener over top of that. What I do use them for is when I am in populated areas to highlight that there is a recovery going on, right? I rely on 3 P's of recovery. Proper plan, I planned it out. Proper rigging, right? I rigged everything correctly. And proper gear, all my gear is rated appropriately. If I do have all 3 of those things, safety is a byproduct of that, right? Safety is a byproduct of that. So now that I feel confident that this trailer is going to come up and over, now I need to start thinking about where that tipping point is, right? Because I'm going to have to make sure that once I reach that tipping point, I'm tight here so I can let that down nice and easy. The last thing I want to do is leave some slack in this so that once it gets up and over, it's going to shock load it because there's going to be nothing I can do to stop it. As much as we'd all like to see that, I'm going to try to avoid it, right? So in adjusting these, it's very simple. We just pull the rope from one side through to the other. If you have a lot of rope to adjust, you can take it out, pull it through until it's close to tight right here, right? We want it close to tight right here. Then give yourself a little slack. The 2 bunny ears, feed them through the center hole, keeping one on the left and one on the right, and then they go over the ears, right? Over those ears. So now I'm a lot closer to being tight and where I want to be. All right, Sarah, winch in, stop. Get some help real fast picking up these 4 corners. Let's just rotate this around a little bit. There we go. That should be enough. Thank you. I cut my tree down. All right, Sarah, winch in. Right now, we see this starting to slip through. I've taken the load, stop, I can hold that load, right? Or I can now control the speed. Do not try to rush through this part, because right here this rope is sliding through. It is creating heat and friction. It will get upwards of 350 to 400 degrees and melt your line. But we see how easy one person, even a small child, could hold this. I don't want to be right here. I don't want to wrap this around my hand, right? And I do want to wear gloves, but not sliding it through my hand. Feed it hand over hand, right? Nice and easy down. Look at that. Now, the first thing I'm going to disconnect here is this, because I want to get away from the heat that's going to stay inside of this unit. I don't want it sitting, and you can even see a little shiny on there, right? Where it rubs some of the oxidation off, but I don't want that heat sitting on my rope. So it is good to disconnect. Before I start disconnecting everything though, you can shut it down, Sarah, thank you. Cool V8, loud, right? But before I start breaking all this down, I want to inspect everything, right? If I'm even concerned that maybe this trailer could roll again, because it's probably in the same position it was before, right? Then I'll keep that winch line on there and I'll keep it tight to keep tension up on it until I get this trailer to a safe spot. We can pivot it around and drive through a little bit, letting the winch in and out to control that.